Hello there, lovely folks of YouTube. Bren here. It is early morning in October here in my garden. I want to talk about this plant behind me that's starting to look a little worse for wear. It's reaching the end of its growth period, but if I don't talk about it now, it's going to be gone and I won't be able to talk about it at all. So this plant is Ipomoa alba, also known as moonflower. Another name for this is the tropical white morning glory. Morning glory, of course, is the name of the general family of flowers that this shares, that Ipomoa family. Most plants in the morning glory family do bloom first thing in the morning. This one is the exception. Now this plant is not to be confused with another plant that's sometimes called moonflower. That's the Datura inoxia or Datura moonflower. They have a very similar flower shape to them, but Datura inoxia grows as sort of like a subshrub with sort of ovate leaves. This has a very distinctive heart-shaped leaf and is a very vigorous crawling vine. I'm sorry, I'm going to get my notes down and grab them because the wind is just kind of just making it annoying. So this plant is very widely known for its very large flowers. This one is just finishing up. You can see they get up to about 6 inches. They can be fragrant. Let me rephrase that. They are fragrant, but not everyone has the genes to smell their fragrance. If you can smell them, they're deliciously fragrant. If you can't smell them, sorry, it's just not in the cards for you. It happens. I can't smell violets. It's part of my genes. I just can't smell it. But they are fragrant, and that fragrance does attract night-flying moths, which is the source of their pollination. That is why they bloom at night instead of in the daytime. This is a tender perennial. It will grow year-round in zones 10 to 12. I'm in zone 7, so it does not grow year-round for me. For me, it's grown as an annual, and for most people. Now, in the places where it can grow as a perennial, you have to be careful because oftentimes it's considered to be invasive. It is a very aggressive grower. The vines will grow anywhere between 10 and 20 feet in length. I'm sitting on a deck that is about 6 feet up from the ground where this was planted. It has climbed all the way up and grown all the way around. This is one plant that has put out all this growth for me. I actually planted 8 seeds because I'd never planted this plant before and I had no idea how large it would get. Thankfully, I had a very poor germination rate and only one of them actually grew. And yes, it was plenty. It was plenty. So they are fairly easy to grow. Hopefully you get a better germination rate than I do. The seeds are rather large. They're larger than a pea. They do have a very tough coat on them, so you do need to sort of nick or scratch that coat and soak the seeds before you plant them in order to get a better germination rate. Damping off is a very common problem with this when you grow it from seeds, which is probably why I lost most of my seeds, honestly. They probably damped off. And if you're not familiar with damping off, what that means, it's a fungal attack that newly sprouted seeds are very vulnerable to, and it basically attacks the vascular tissue of these plants and just causes them to just wilt right then and there as soon as they sprout. This plant does not like cool weather or frost. I have not been getting a lot of flowers on it the past week or so because we've been dropping down into the 40s at night. It's not happy with it. You can see it's doing all kinds of crazy stuff with the leaves because it doesn't like that cold. I've had a few vines that have fallen off. Like I don't know if you can see this. Like, this is a flower that tried to open and then just couldn't because it was too cold. So it's finishing up now, but at its height, gorgeous, gorgeous. It is very attractive, you know, it has these nice, real sturdy vines, these nice heart-shaped leaves that just spread really nicely, very big, sturdy, twining, vining plant. It does need a lot of space, obviously. Having it here on my deck is good. It gives it some place to go up and gives it a nice room to spread. You don't necessarily want to plant it somewhere that doesn't have a good vertical trellis for it to go on because it will spread and cover all over the ground and smother out a lot of other plants. So this plant does like full sun, so you can see the morning sun is just starting to come up and it basically gets sun for the majority of the rest of the day. It really liked that. It will grow in part shade, but it won't bloom as much. So something to keep in mind, because obviously most of us are growing this for the flowers. It does prefer a more rich, sort of loamy soil, but it's not terribly picky about the soil type as long as it's evenly watered. This plant loves moisture and loves humidity. So growing it here in the south, perfect. It loves the humid summers, the hot humid summers we have. If you are in a drier climate, you're going to need to water the hell out of it in order to make sure that the area around it is getting that moisture that this plant loves. So now this plant, like I said, it's grown as an annual here. It will be perennial in tropical areas, but you probably don't want to plant it there because, again, it will be invasive. The good news is that it makes lots and lots of these little seed pods, which I have some behind me too. Here's a nice big one right here. This one is pretty much right here. Nice big seed pod. There are 4 seeds in each of these seed pods, so the one seed that I had grow for me will probably give me, just as an estimate, somewhere around 100 seeds, probably. So, very prolific spreader. It's part of the reason why it's considered to be invasive. I will have plenty of moonflower seeds to plant again for next year, so I really only had to buy this plant once. And as long as I'm being conscientious about harvesting the seed from it, it is not having any problems in producing seed for me, that's for sure. So I will definitely be planting this again because I will have the seeds from it. Now, one caveat, this plant is mildly toxic, as most of the plants in the Ipomoa family are. Not all of them, there are some plants, like for example sweet potatoes are in the Ipomoa family and the tubers of that are fine. But, this plant is very mildly toxic. It's not anything that is commonly known to kill people, but it can make you really sick. So if you have small children or pets that might get into this plant, you might want to use caution if you're going to plant this plant. Make sure it's somewhere where they can't access it, just to be safe. Now, let's talk about some of the magical properties of this plant. Obviously, this is a very moon energy plant. This little flower is just about done. Very, very clear alignment with the moon on this. The way it likes moisture, the way that the flowers open at night, just the appearance of the flowers, the fragrance of the flowers, everything about this plant is moon energy, particularly the flowers itself. So, anytime you're doing anything related to moon energy, divination, dream work, any kind of that inner, emotional work, moonflower is a great plant to use in support of that. This flower would be absolutely stunning if you were to pick the flower and float them in a bath at the full moon, like a full moon ritual, goddess work, anything like that. Moonflower would be a great plant to use to support that kind of work. Now, the vines, as most, vining plants, would be really great for binding magic. One of the common names for the Ipomoa family is bindweed, and it does just completely bind and restrict anything that it grows over. So if you need to do some restrictive work on something, particularly if you're looking for something with more of a moon cant to it, somebody's putting out some really negative emotions or something like that, this would be a good plant to use in some binding magic for that respect. So that's another option that you could use this plant for. Finally, it is worth noting that this plant is in the same family as High John the Conqueror. High John the Conqueror, or John the Conqueror, is Ipomoa purga. It grows, flowers in the daytime, of course, with these big, sort of reddish purple flowers. Theoretically, you could use the root of this plant as an alternative to High John the Conqueror, particularly if you wanted something that was a little more moon aligned instead of sun aligned, like High John the Conqueror is. But yeah, High John the Conqueror is usually used in hoodoo practice, and hoodoo practitioners are, from my understanding, because I'm not a hoodoo practitioner, but they're very resourceful people, And the whole practice is based around using what you can find around you. So if you don't have High John the Conqueror around you, maybe this would be a good alternative for you to use in your hoodoo practice. So there's that as well. Anyway, I have had a lot of fun growing this plant this year. This is my first year, like I mentioned. I am really looking forward to harvesting the seeds from this and doing it over again next year. Maybe I might even be a little adventurous and try and grow 2 of them. That'll be a mess. Oh my gosh, this is it's made a bit of a mess here. So all these spent flowers. but we'll see. It's been a really easy plant to grow. I literally just put the seeds in the ground. I got 1 out of my 8 seeds that sprouted, and it's required minimal care from me. The only thing I've had to do is basically do a little bit of redirecting of the vines to make sure that they're growing where I want them and not where I don't want them. But yeah, it's been really easy, really fun, really rewarding plant. So just remember, only likes the heat, so you got to plant it after your last frost and it'll die back before your first frost. If you're in a colder climate, that means you may have to start it indoors, but yeah, very rewarding plant. Anyway, I think that's all I have for you on this one. I hope this video finds you well, and I will see you again soon.